Thursday, March 10, 2011. Dinner and Learn, God of Our Understanding, Part 14.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Judaism and Recovery. We are reading the tail end of chapter 11 on page 96 about sponsorship. And really what we're discussing is the Talmud in the Ethics of the Fathers says three things. It says, make yourself a teacher, acquire yourself a friend, and judge every person favorably. And we said those three things are sponsorship, fellowship, and tolerance. And we're going to explore a few other interpretations of make yourself a teacher. Basically says, don't make your own decisions for yourself. Check in with another person. But really, we're going to look at three other interpretations of that same exact sentence that will shed some more light on the spiritual principles of sponsorship and mentorship. We're going to go to page 96 in the third paragraph, which says, one meaning of making a teacher is that one must do just that. One must make someone become a teacher. Being a sponsor is not an intrinsic status. Like you graduated from school and now you are a PhD. And then you're a sponsor. That's not the way it works. A sponsor is not a sponsor without a sponsee. In other words, you are the one who makes your sponsor a sponsor. You invest in him or her the power to guide you. This is an incredibly important idea. Agreeing to take direction from someone does not make us weak. To the contrary, it is one of the more powerful decisions that are ours to make. When we cannot bring ourselves to receive guidance, that is when we are weak, because it means we cannot break out of personal limitations. How much am I willing to become? How big am I willing to become? I am willing to become as big as I can ever be? Or am I willing to become even bigger than I can be? Am I willing to entertain all the ideas that I agree with? Or am I big enough to entertain ideas I disagree with? Weakness is when I cannot accept other ideas because other ideas threaten me. Other people's advice of how I should do things questions my own stability, my own sanity. That's weakness. Strength is when I am open-minded to hear someone else's opinion of how I should do things without feeling threatened by it. So the step to make someone your teacher means I am taking a step to want to grow bigger than my own limitations. In the verse that discusses the creation of Eve, God says to the angels, I will make a help against him. Not for him. The woman was not created to help for the man, but to create a help against the man. It's a contradiction. Either it's helpful, either it's against it. And the Talmud says, if he's a good husband, she would be help. If he's a bad husband, she would be against him. That's nice. Kabbalah says, how is she helping him? By being against him. Not in a negative way. By buying a contrast to his nature. If the man would be only with man, then he will not have any resistance to make him grow out outside of his own limitations. By creating a person outside which has a different nature and sometimes a contrasting nature. That in itself is the help. It helps you go out of your own little shell, of your own little self, and to grow to something bigger. It makes us open-minded rather than closed-minded. So make yourself a sponsor. It's in your hands to make a sponsor. No one can make it for you. Again, another interpretation. There's yet another reading to those words. One does not attend classes or undergo a certification process to become a sponsor. True, a sponsor may take some guidance from his or her own sponsor, but one really becomes a sponsor only through the experience of being one. So who are you making a sponsor? In that process, the feedback from the sponsee is fundamental. The sponsee can help to make a teacher by honestly telling the sponsor how he should be doing. The sponsor and sponsee are partners in a relationship, and the sponsee has an obligation to make that relationship work, just as the sponsor has that obligation. As the Mishnah says, much have I learned from my teachers, even more from my colleagues, and from my students, most of all. So by being a good sponsee, we're making the sponsor a good sponsor. So by being a disciple, I make a teacher. If I have a lot of knowledge, and I don't share it with anyone, I'm not a teacher. A teacher is when there's a disciple. So who makes a teacher a teacher? Not his acquire of knowledge, but the fact that he's teaching to a disciple. So in a sense, the disciple allows the teacher to be a teacher, gives the teacher an opportunity to be a teacher. Page 98. Whether a sponsor is always right or not is entirely besides the point. What is relevant is that when we get out of our own heads long enough to truly listen to someone else, we may also be able to hear God. So it's about me. What am I doing? If I can shut up for long enough, I can hear for long enough. A fourth interpretation of that piece of Talmud. One final point on the idea of sponsorship coincides with another interpretation of the teaching, make for yourself a teacher. In the Hebrew, these words can just as easily be read, make yourself into a teacher. The ultimate in mentorship is when the student becomes a mentor to others. I once saw, he saw, a bumper sticker that read, sponsors get one, use one, be one. 12 steps groups are not hierarchies. There's no concept of initiation, matriculation, rank, or hazing. To wit, they say, they do haze. Be nice to newcomers. They may someday be your sponsor. One can aspire to become a sponsor and indeed is encouraged to do so, for the benefits of giving are ultimately greater than those of receiving, as the Talmud says. About giving charity more than the rich man does for the poor man, does the poor man do for the rich man. Hasidic saying tells us by working with others, our own minds and hearts become refined and more receptive to godliness 1,000-fold. Which means that the same way that in physical, monetary charity, if I give my money to a poor person, I am actually gaining from the experience, according to the Talmud, not only spiritually, but also financially. I am becoming richer. My bank account physically grows when I give away my money to charity. So too, when I give my time away to charity, my time grows physically. So if there's 24 hours in my day, and I spend 1 hour, instead of spending it on myself, I spend it helping another person, my resources of time actually grow. How is that possible? Time, you can't make time. Time is one thing we don't have. Well, our Kabbalistic teacher says, you could get time. How do you get time? Sometimes it takes you a long time to understand something. Sometimes you can check something out. You're late at night and you're reading a book. It's not a novel or something light. It's something a little more deep than the People's Magazine. I don't know, something. And you can read a chapter and it takes you a while you maybe read it a second time or you have to think about it. In the morning when your brain is sharp, boom, boom, boom. You can read the same chapter, the same paragraph, and it goes much faster. So we see that in our lives, sometimes it takes us physically longer to understand something, and times it takes us shorter times to understand something, to comprehend something, to internalize something. So our Kabbalistic sages say, when we spend our own time with others, then this time that we need for ourselves is multiplied because we understand much faster. God gives us a gift that our brain, like it says in the last sentence, our own minds and hearts become refined and more receptive to godliness 1,000-fold. Our spiritual experiences are put on the fast track. And therefore now we have more time. So become a sponsor. Chapter 12, Fellowship. What's the second piece of that Mishnah, of that piece of Talmud that says, acquire for yourself a friend? The first question we may ask is why it says make for yourself a teacher, but acquire for yourself a friend. Rabbi Menachem Meiri, the 13th century Spanish Talmudist, explains that much work is entailed in making something new than is merely acquiring something that already exists. This means, as we explained above, that we have to make someone be our teacher. We must empower a person to be our mentor and guide. A friend, on the other hand, is not someone who has to be groomed to the position. You don't have to invest work to make a friend a friend. A friend is simply one whom we can readily relate on equal plane. A friend is already a friend. We need only connect a friend as he or she is. Indeed, that may be the best definition of a friend. Someone to whom we can relate without any special work involved. Get a friend. Thus, in the most basic term, friendship is based on identification. There is already a friend out there for you. Because there is another person in the world who lives a life that's similar to you, with interests that are similar to you, with priorities that are similar to you. And when you guys are going to meet, you're going to click. Because you identify with each other, because your lives have taken similar paths, because your interests and your hobbies are similar. That's what a friend is. A friend is someone that we just are with them because we're similar in nature. We identify with each other's experience. A friend is quite simply someone with whom we can identify. Fulfilling our need to find people with whom we readily identify can be essential to life itself. There's a Talmudic adage that rhymes in the original Aramaic, O chavrusa, O misusa, which literally means there's either friendship or there's death. And I'm skipping, basically, the Talmud is stating a fact. One cannot live without friends. It's not a choice, it's a fact. If we cannot go through life without having a feeling that what we are experiencing, someone else experiences something similar. The isolation of feeling that we are the exact only one person who feels this exact way is quote-unquote a killer. Emotionally, it drains us physically, and really is what sometimes brings us to addiction. If we look at the story of AA, it's also the solution for recovery. And the author here goes into some history here with how Bill W. was in Akron, Ohio, and basically he was looking for someone who went through a similar experience as him. Because if not, he was in that hotel room in the hotel lobby, he was going to the bar. At the bar was his favorite poison, alcohol. Either he was going to find somebody who he can identify with, or he was going to die. Now the person that he found to identify with him also was saved by the exact same event, that he found someone who could identify with him. So again, identification. On the bottom of page 100. There's an old Yiddish saying, don't ask the doctor, ask the sick person. The very premise of the 12-step fellowships is that people who share a commonality can help one another in a way that no one else can. 12-step groups are not run by professionals or specially trained leaders who guide the therapeutic process. Indeed, there's nothing at all like a formal process. A meeting of 12-step group is by definition nothing more than two or more people with the same basic problem come together to discuss a common solution. But the same problem or the same solution, it's two of us. That's it. That's a meeting. No one's an authority. No one's in charge. In this unique approach to healing, the clinician role is conspicuously absent. Conspicuously absent. And there's a profound sense of equality, interconnectedness, rarely found even in groups intentionally assembled with group chemistry in mind. Even the sponsor who's vested with some semblance of authority is just another addict. If in the previous chapter we talked about a vertical relationship between sponsor and sponsee, now we're revealing another aspect to that same relationship of the sponsor and sponsee, which is a horizontal relationship. In recovery, it is not enough to have this vertical relationship, if it's with a sponsor or with a treatment professional. Actually, we'll see in the story of how Dr. Bob and Bill W. approached Bill D., the third AA, that a doctor or a professional would not have been able to help at all. He did not want to speak to a doctor who told him what to do. The reason he agreed to hear out Dr. Bob and Bill W. was because they were not coming as doctors, they were coming as drunks. That's reason number one. Reason number two, he was doing them a favor, officially. They told him that they're not coming to help him. We're not here to help you. We're here to help ourselves. We need you. Now what happened? They empowered him. They empowered the sick person to be an equal partner in the process, contributing to whatever was happening, not only to him, but to them also. So when we have fellowship here, in this sense, when we find people who have similar experiences and get together for a common good, what do we have? We have a sense of duty. Page 102. Another important aspect of fellowship is the sense of duty that it evokes. Pride can often be an obstacle to getting help. I don't need help. A lot of times, next door we have volunteers and kids with special needs. And sometimes there's a teenager that's identified as one who needs help. But it's hard for him to agree to that. He's a little older. So he is hired to be a volunteer. So now we give him, we're not here to help you. You're here, we're inviting you to be helping. And then we create an environment for him where him supervised volunteering is therapeutic for him, and he gets help from it. So sometimes there's an obstacle that when a person is told that you need help, you need fixing, or here's someone who's going to give you a better idea how to run your life, we resist right away. But when we invite them in the process, we say, listen, we want you to help us do something for us. Because here, it's all horizontal. There's no vertical. Everyone here is for the same reason. We're all here for the same thing. We have the same illness, and we're seeking the same solution. Bill W. and Dr. Bob returned to see Bill D. for several days. On their final visit before Bill D. was released from the hospital, Bill W. and Dr. Bob found Bill D.'s wife Henrietta sitting with him at his bedside. As soon as they entered, Bill D. shut up, pointed at them with great excitement, and cried out, "These are the fellows I told you about. They are the ones who understand." That's from Dr. Bob's story in the back of the big book. Ultimately, the most valuable currency that a friend can offer is that of understanding. So we said before, we said identification, and now we're saying understanding. The feeling that one is understood by others fosters a profound sense of hope and trust that nothing else can replace. And now we're going to understand how this fits in the program of recovery from addiction. What happens to an addict? One of the points that I've mentioned enough times throughout this book as to consider a major theme is the addict's tendency to feel different. Terminally unique. It is typical of addicts to go through life with a constant nagging sense that somehow they are not like other people. At first, the addictive behavior seems to provide a most welcome sense of comfort and confidence that allows the addict to feel that he or she can deal with other people. Because I'm different. They don't understand me. The only way I can interact with them safely is by using my substance, my mood-altering substance. Ultimately, the addiction becomes an all-consuming obsession, and the addict is left feeling and actually being more isolated than ever before. Not only have I not found a way to interact with other people, I have made myself even more different than other people. Because now I have this addiction that I have to deal with. This feeling of uniqueness can be one of the greatest obstacles to recovery. And I can attest to that. The reason they're not using all them people in AA is because they don't have the magnitude of the problems that I have. I promise you that if they would go through what I go through, AA wouldn't work for them either. I hear that all the time from different people who have seriously stories that are horrible. And I agree with that. But that sense of I'm the only one who's going through this and no one has it as bad as I do becomes an obstacle of changing help. The reason it works for them because they don't have what I have. If they would have what I have, it wouldn't work either, so why bother? How is one to break through to someone who feels positively misunderstood by everyone else in the world? It is in addressing this quandary that we could realize another invaluable asset of the group. So here we're going to start talking about why there's AA meetings and a fellowship, not only one-on-one, but as a group. What happens? Not only does identification allow the addict to feel safe in recovery, but also, and more important, identification is a key element of recovery itself. Addiction is a disease of self-obsession. Recovery is healing through relating to God and to another human beings as a way of getting outside of the self. And we talked about it last week, and we'll talk about it again this week, and we're going to see how the group allows us to have a relationship with God. Okay? The group is a way for us to have a relationship with God. Obviously, there's a value, there's an intrinsic value in having a relationship with the group, but also, on top of that, it also allows for us to have an even greater relationship which is a relationship with God. Page 103. Of course, 12-step fellowships are not just about connecting to other people. Recovery through the steps is about developing a relationship with God. Yet, these are not two separate things. And one of the most powerful ways by which we connect with God is through our relationship with other people. Jews are no stranger to the idea of people getting close to God by getting close to one another. We see that in all aspects of Judaism, communal involvement plays a central role in our relationship with God. And we see this both in the way we're told we should study Torah. If you walk into a law school library, what do you hear the most? Silence. If you walk in a Talmudic law hall, study hall, what do you hear? Noise, and a lot of it. Everyone is yelling, everyone is arguing, everyone is talking. in pairs, in groups of 3 or 4. The Talmud tells us that the best way we can acquire the Word of God is not by reading the Word of God, but by discussing it with other people. Same way goes with prayer. In other religions, a lot of the prayer is done on your knees alone in your room in quiet. In our religion, prayers are done communally in a synagogue. Certain prayers cannot be said unless there's a quorum of 10 people. The minyan. Now, the minyan is the great equalizer. The great equalizer. 10 people we don't need somebody to be smart, intelligent, learned. They can be from the tribe of a Kohen, a Levi, Israelite. No one counts more than the other one. Everyone is in there. And the value that we bring is not our own personal value, but our group value. When we are 10 together, we create a new reality that is more than the sum of all the 10 individuals. That's how God wants us to pray. That's how God wants us to study. On the bottom of 103. Studying Torah and praying in groups are not done for the sake of coming into contact with teachers or leaders. Of course Judaism directs us all to seek out a mentor, as really noted. But the group is something that's important in its own right. We're not told that only certain groups will facilitate our spiritual growth. We're told that every Torah class and every minyan, regardless of individuals who form the whole, has the latent power to bring us to a level of closeness with God that we cannot attain on our own. There's a saying in AA that the word God can also be read as an acronym that stands for Group of Drunks. In my experience, not mine, his, I have seen this concept misunderstood by those who would take it to what I consider useless extremes. On the other hand, there are those who decry the group of drunks idea because to them it smacks of secular humanism, that it demeans the whole notion of belief in God. On the other hand, there are those who really do use the group of drunks model to argue that they need not grow in their faith and develop a relationship with God because they have a real relationship with a group of drunks. Coming from a Jewish perspective as I do, it is hard for me to see what all the fuss is about. As the Hasidic saying goes, you shall love your fellows yourself is the vessel into which one draws down. You shall love the Lord your God. In other words, when there was an argument between certain Hasidic masters, what was more important? If the love of God was more important or the love of one fellow was more important? The Alter Rebbe, Rav Shmuel Zalman, gave his opinion. He said the love of one fellow is more important. Why? Because the love of one fellow brings to the love of God. Why? Because a true sign of love is when I love whom my lover loves. In other words, if I tell a person, you're my best friend, I love you, but I can't stand your kids, okay? That shows already the limitation of that expression of love. When one says, I love you, then they have to accept and love anything that is dear to that person whom they love. If not, they're fooling themselves by saying, I love you. So when I say, I love God's children, and God definitely loves His children, then I'm automatically saying that I'm loving God. So by connecting myself with a group of drunks, then I'm automatically connecting myself to the entity that loves this group of drunks, which is God. Okay. On page 105, a final word about the healing qualities of the group. I am reminded of King Solomon's eloquent words. Ecclesiastes Ecclesiastes. I got it right. Two are better than one, because they have good rewards for their toil. For if they fail, one will lift up his friend. But woe to the one who falls, and woe to the one who falls and has no second one to lift him up. Moreover, if two lie down, they will have warmth, but how will one have warmth? And if a man prevails against the one, the two will stand against him. Still greater than two is a threefold cord, not easily broken. Quite simply, we can do together what we cannot do alone. The Medrash says that the Jewish people are likened to reeds. A single reed is easily snapped in half, but a bundle of reeds cannot be broken. The philosopher called this synergy. A state wherein the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Certainly, the group in cooperative recovery is a strong example of the exponential yield of synergic bonding. Mouthful. In mystical terms, there's a story. Rabbi Taub said, when two people meet, then it benefits both of them spiritually, because it is two godly souls against one animal soul. He refers to what his father, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, wrote in the book of Tanya, that each one of us is driven by two different forces for all of our lives. One is our godly soul, and the other one is our animal soul. And they keep on fighting each other for control over our body, over our actions, over our speech, over our thoughts. It's very hard to battle the animal soul with the godly soul, for many reasons, which we'll not go into right now. But when two people are together, it's much easier, because now it's two godly souls against one animal soul. Now, for those of you who know how to count, if each one has an animal soul and a godly soul, then when there's two people, there should be two godly souls against two animal souls. So, but Reb Dover says no. Actually, when there's two people, there's two godly souls, one animal soul. Why is that? Because the godly soul inside of us is our selfless self. And the animal soul inside of us is our selfish self. Selfless, by definition, is always the same. Because it's the lack of ego. Zero is always the same thing. It doesn't matter if it was 5 minus 5, or 7 minus 7, or 13 minus 13. Whatever you took out, the total is zero. Once you remove whatever there is, it's zero. Selflessness is zero. Zero is always the same. Ego is always different. Always different. Especially the ego and the animalistic soul, which basically wants and desires something to fulfill a physical need of mine. Well, my physical needs are different than your physical needs. I will never desire so much for you to have that drug. I desire for myself to have that drug. You desire for yourself. So our desires for drugs, although they're similar in nature, are very different and separate from each other. Because you want for yourself, and I want for myself. So two animal souls will never band together and join forces together. They can't. By nature they can't. They always stand alone. Godly souls, by contrast, always stand together. They naturally bind and bond to each other because they have exactly the same composition of selflessness. So when two people meet, It's both of our two godly souls against your animal soul, and both of our godly souls against my animal soul. The godly souls bind together, the animal souls take each their own path. Perhaps, on the bottom of page 105, we might say that a similar phenomenon occurs in the rooms of recovery. Each person's disease is focused on itself, while each person's spiritual side bonds with that which is redeeming in all of its fellows. Of course. So in recovery, we have different addiction by nature. Each one of us experiences our addiction differently. Our desires, our animalistic urges are different, but our solution is the same. So when we get together, we have two powers of solution against one power of addiction. With three together, then our power of solution is threefold against still one addiction. Of course, this phenomenon does not always take place spontaneously. You don't walk into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous or any other fellowship and suddenly we feel a merging of the souls, of the godly souls, and every single animal soul feels the pounding of all of that together. No. There are instances of group being undermined by the unhealthy tendencies of one or a few individuals. Yet remarkably, the 12-step group somehow seemingly organically minimizes such ill effect and maximizes only the most positive contribution of each member. Somehow most groups seem to gravitate toward a healthy state of interconnectedness and adherence to the largely unspoken rules. Please share your message, not your mess. All of this happens without experts guiding the process. It happens, I believe, because God has placed us together for a reason. And when individuals seek God together in humility and in earnest, the resulting product is something that clearly exceeds human potential. So the reason the group is so powerful, more than the sum of its parts, is because the group invites a new entity amongst it, which is the entity of God. The best way to invite God, last week we spoke about how there's no room in the room for God if we don't make room for it, because our egos are all over the room. The best way to make room for God is to join a group. Because then I'm saying that I am willing to connect to others. And the only way I can connect to others is through what? My godly soul. My animal soul does not allow me to connect to others. Every single time I connect with another human being on a real level is because our godly souls have connected. So when I walk into a group wanting to be part of the group, I am giving power to my godly soul to connect with other godly souls. That's an invitation for God to be the third partner. It is a gift from above to those who seek Him from below.